That's a darn guy.
Okay.
You must be out cutting trees someplace.
Must be. So my name is Tad Mason. I'm a forester. Reside near Sacramento, California. Anybody know where that is? At any rate, I presented yesterday up at the resort, and I don't want to be too repetitive, but basically what Lance asked me to speak on, and Darren, was kind of the California perspective and what we've been doing and where we see biomass utilization going. First off, I'd like to really say some good things about the sponsors of this field day. I've been on a number of these field days, and this is great. I'm really glad we also happen to have the Milford Fighting Tigers here. It's great to have the high school in place. There are some careers in resource management, and clearly this is a resource that needs managing. So just to repeat a few things I said yesterday, because there are some new faces here that folks that didn't see my presentation. Basically in California, we started building commercial scale biopower facilities in around 1984. And this was as a result of some federal policies that forced the utilities to buy power at elevated rates. And that power needed to be renewable. And so for renewable, it had to be geothermal, landfill gas recovery, biomass, wind, or solar. And California having 40 million acres of forested landscape, we had the biomass. We also have about 3 million acres of orchards, walnut, almond, olive. And so the ag sector also puts out a lot of wood. So at any rate, we ultimately geared up. Today we have 33 commercial scale projects operating, 33 in place, 28 operating. 5 are idle because these plants were designed with 30-year lifespans. That's their service life. And the first generation plants are starting to cycle down. So we're trying to figure out how to retool and get in with the second generation of power plants. The challenge is natural gas has driven the value of wholesale energy just in the basement. In 2008, we know the gas was at $12 a million BTU. Today is close, it's south of $4. And that is a primary driver in setting the value of renewable energy, believe it or not, in California. Something called the market price referent is tied directly to natural gas. So the market price referent in 2008 was about 12 cents a kilowatt hour. Today it's less than 7. So it really makes it tough to build that 20 megawatt, 30 megawatt. The biggest we have is 50 megawatts, 100 truckloads a day of biomass going into that 50 megawatt plant. It's really hard to gear up when you don't have a power sales opportunity. So what we're seeing right now, the trend is to convert existing coal plants. We had 6 coal plants, all small, 50 megawatts and less, and our firm has been helping convert 3 of those. There's 3 left. We'll probably be converting those before too long as well. But the only reason we're able to make that conversion is because there's a climate change initiative policy in the state of California that we're trying to mitigate carbon footprint, basically greenhouse gas emissions. And so there's a real move to eliminate coal plants in California, and we see by about 2020 all of the coal plants will be either converted or shut down. And that's just state policy. That's just California state policy, Assembly Bill 32, if you want to look that up. So where we're going now as far as biomass utilization is looking at small scale, 3 megawatts and less. Gasification technologies appear to be the most efficient at this point. There's some pretty good European gasifiers that basically you're taking the woody biomass, cooking it, if you will, creating a syngas just like that little machine right there, and feeding it into an internal combustion engine and creating power. We're doing that right now at a 0.5 megawatt scale in a little town called Merced, California, and it's working. The syngas is going into a CAT 3516 engine, and we're creating power, not on a base load basis, on pretty much peak load basis from 10 a.m. to about 8 p.m. 5 days a week. That's when value is of most power in California, because that's when all the air conditioners are on, right? That's peak demand. So we're trying to integrate the power generation from that facility to capture a higher price electricity that's basically valued between 10 a.m. and 8 p.m. So that's just an example. The other place we're using that technology, we hope to use it, is behind the meter. So if you're a wastewater treatment plant and you're paying 18 cents kilowatt hour for power to Pacific Gas and Electric, we would like to talk to you about coming in and putting in a small unit behind the meter and delivering to you 14-cent power. At that price point, 14, 15, 16 cents, that smaller scale gasification can work. You want to look for facilities that have a predictable load, like a wastewater treatment plant, or, believe it or not, casino. We're working with some Indian casinos to help them get behind the meter and not only provide power, but also thermal energy. Right now we're looking at a project in western Minnesota, the Shooting Star Casino, and they have a 4 million BTU an hour thermal load, and we're helping them bring in woody biomass. So let's talk about thermal. We know from yesterday's discussion with Cody Stewart, the energy advisor to the governor, that there is no way in heck that Utah is going to have a renewable portfolio standard. I mean, that was very clear from that discussion. So my recommendation is look at other ways to add value to woody biomass. It could be thermal, it could be fuel pellets, it could be torrefication, it could be biofuels, advanced biofuels, drop-in fuels. It could, from bio oil, refined bio oil to cellulosic ethanol. The challenge with liquid fuels, though, just to be aware, we've been working in that space a lot ourselves. There are no commercially viable technologies today that a bank will finance. And I applaud the effort that Dallas was presenting on, and I think Ralph's here. There's a move to have a portable pyrolysis unit creating bio-oil in the woods. That's great. That's very innovative. I hope you're successful, but it's going to be challenging. It is a challenging field to operate in. Other value-added options: soil amendment. Some of your vendors here have Rotochopper has an excellent chopper out here. If you add it on, for example, a colorization unit, you could create landscape cover. There's a big demand, believe it or not, in the urban centers for landscape cover, black, red, whatever color. Also, blending those fines in with organic compost make for excellent soil amendment. There's a real significant market these days, especially in urban centers, for organic compost and landscape cover. And then lastly, in California, we also have a lot of wineries, and these wineries are very interested in organic compost to increase their yields, and it's a good selling point to their customer base as well. Other value-added options to consider is oriented strand board, composite panels. Looking at the fiber out here, I think it was Rick had done some sampling, and looking at it closely, it could be a decent feedstock possibly for oriented strand board. I know that the housing market's in the tank. We're looking at 400,000 starts, maybe 500,000 starts this year, but eventually that will turn. And products like structural panels, oriented strand board, hardboard, particle board will come back eventually. That might be a value-added option for this PJ material. We have a similar juniper type in California known as Western juniper, and right now we have some power plants that are taking in Western juniper to the tune of 3,000 and 4,000 acres a year. Our yields, our recovery on a per acre basis is about 8 tons an acre, but Western juniper has a different form class and a little bit larger stem size, but pretty similar landscape to what you got here, and that's how we're managing the Western juniper today. There's a few firewood operations going in Western juniper. There was a fencing plant in Alturas, California that was trying to make it, didn't work out so well. So what I would recommend is diversifying your value-added markets. Don't get tied to any one thing, like advanced biofuels, or just honing on torrefaction or pellets. Diversify. Look at a diversified blend of value-added products. That way, if any one of those markets goes south, you have the other markets to fall back on, hopefully. Third point is the organizations that you've pulled together, the Utah Biomass Resource Group and the PJ Partnership. These are great efforts to help champion the cause, and eventually, hopefully, you can get to some of the policymakers at either the county level or state level to engage them, as well as other stakeholders, hopefully to bring them on board to look at the opportunities that do lie here, not only in restoring the landscape, but also in job creation, which is a big deal, of course. As far as trying to wheel power from Utah to California, in my opinion, I wouldn't go there. With natural gas being at $4 right now, we're not going to see wholesale renewable energy prices in California come back up anytime soon. If gas changes, then prices should come up, and maybe there will be some opportunities to wheel power into California again. The other opportunities that we see, just from our experience, is the idea of distributed generation. You know, I mentioned these small 3 megawatt and less biomass power plants, gasification. We're seeing load growth in certain parts of the state, and the utilities really like the idea of positioning a new generator where that load growth is. And because these are so small, it doesn't take an upgrade in the transmission system to install these units and get them interconnected. So if you're really interested in biopower, small scale, look for the load centers also. That's where you're going to get the attention, hopefully, of Pacific Core, because it probably is not worth their economic or financial investment at a new generation station when you can come in with a 2 or 3 megawatt unit and stabilize that part of the grid. Darren?
Well, I would guess in Utah those load centers would be in the urban areas where they're all non-attainment areas for air quality.
Right.
So you'd be fighting that, right?
Not necessarily. I mean, these gasification units, the emissions profile are impressive, and you'd be amazed at what the source tests, stack tests come in at. And I think you could make the case that they're clean enough to actually operate in a non-attainment center. We permitted a project in a non-attainment center, San Joaquin Valley, and at a 0.5 megawatt, that Merced unit. And so I think you might be able to get away with that. But the other part is a good point. If the urban center is the load center, then you also need to work with those constituents, you know, and they're going to have to put up. You have to think about traffic, truck traffic to bring the woody material in. You're going to have to think about noise, a little bit of noise there. So that's the other reason to bring some stakeholders into your groups that are meeting, UBRG, or the PJ partnership, so that everybody's at the table. Just something to think about, observation. Let's see. The other question.
I was just going to say, can I carry that conversation with small gasification units? You know, wind farmers showing up. These folks, guys, thank you, and open more work for them out here west of us, and they have their what's it called, guys? The gap, right? That to fill, right? And so the thought of the wind farm, and when the wind's not blowing, they still need to provide power, right? So maybe these small gasification units associated with the, you know, even the folks who were here, White Plains County has one also.
Yeah. See, that's some great creative thinking. I mean, a hybrid approach where you have wind, and then you have dispatchable biomass to back up behind that wind. That's a great idea. I mean, we haven't done that out where I'm working.
And they have their agreements for the transition lines and the power lines to wherever they're feeding, so I would think we could maybe hook on way out in the West Desert to a power line someplace.
Right, right. That could be doable. But the challenge in Utah is going to always be, without a renewable portfolio standard, the value of the power is just so cheap right now. It's tough to compete.
Sell to California, I believe.
What's that?
I think they already have their contracts out of state. They don't even sell in state.
Right.
Good.
Good.
Within their renewable contract.
If they can wheel it out of state, that's great. Any other questions? Okay, the other space we're starting to work in is some of the counties, more rural counties, have been quite frustrated with the high unemployment issues and the fact that they're constantly being burned over. We have wildfire issues in California that run very catastrophic, very, very challenging. And so we have a couple of communities. Placer County, for example, is now in the process of developing their own 2 megawatt biopower facility. And they're locating, and this is something to think about, they're locating it at their landfill. So the idea here is wood coming in, demolition wood, tree trimmings, will anchor the feedstock supply, which is fairly cheap, of course, because that's just trash coming in. You just sort it, keep it clean, and it makes a pretty good feedstock. So the idea here is to anchor the feedstock supply with that material, generate 2 megawatts on a base load basis, and sell it to the utility. They don't have a load there at the landfill, so they have to sell it out. So the other option then, is what I'm putting on the table here, is as a county effort. You know, counties can also sponsor projects, bring in equity partners to work with them, so the equity partners can take advantage of the tax credits, but the county can have an equity position because they own the landfill, and site control is a big deal. So just something to think about.
One more question, if I may. Again, Milford, very familiar with our geothermal plants out here, out west, and you talked about the idea, so maybe we can use this stuff for to heat water they're already using to make more energy with their existing plant.
Co-locate, you bet. Yeah, co-locate, because you already have an existing asset, right? It's already permitted. It's got the water. I mean, it's all there. Yeah, co-location could absolutely be doable. Okay, and then not to take up too much time here, because I know we want to go see the baler, but I do want to put in a good word for the vendors. As we were developing the early projects in California in 84, 85, 86, we had to develop the supply chain, and it was the vendors that saved the day. Caterpillar, Timberjack, Timco, John Deere, Valmet. We had to get very creative with how we basically sheared the standing timber, skidded it in, chipped it, and then trucked it into the power plants. And without the vendors, we could not have pulled that off. So think, supply chain infrastructure, supply chain development. If you really are going down the value-added path, hold your vendors close, work with them whenever you can, and hopefully come up with more efficient, cost-effective systems over time. But I really applaud the effort of bringing in the vendors now at this early stage, because that's what made it work for us. And between 84 and 1992, we actually brought online 500 megawatts of new biopower. And the only way we could do that is with the vendors. So consider them to be a partner. That's my